I need everybody to stop for a second, and I need all of us to have a very serious conversation this morning. I have a person here who um, is trying to mansplain to me how men are violent, but they are violent specifically because of women, specifically because they are raised by women. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I'm a licensed therapist. I've been counseling people for many years now, and I spent many years working for the Department of Corrections. And I've worked with inmates for, probably the majority of my career. And I did a post and I talked about how men can be aggressive towards one another to try to accumulate power, and they want to humiliate other men. And here I have a man and trying to mansplain to me, and not just me. I won't make it about me. He's also, other men are trying to talk to him in my comments, and he's not hearing. Um, and I don't want to say this. Let me address this, because here's someone who's trying to tell me professionally about my career, and I've had this over the past few days where I've had men try to mansplain to me. Where did you go to college? What's your degree? First of all, I've never had another man. I've never seen a man question another man about where he went to college. And his degree and statistics. I don't usually see that either. I usually only see that when men are talking to women and they're trying to discredit what women say, even though you have a bunch of men in the comments who are agreeing with me. And even if they weren't, I've worked it, I've lived it, I've seen it, 1,000 times over. And here's where I think there is a literacy crisis in the United States, where people are not reading, writing, comprehending, or thinking critically, or even at this point, watching the news. Let me tell you something. Men are inherently violent by nature. They're predatory by nature. And I won't say all men, because I'm not going to say that, but, men have traditionally, even back in the day, they were hunters, women were gatherers and nurturers. And so by nature, men hunt, they kill, they seek power. And even if we take that off the table, just take a look at what's happening right now with men being violent. And, we're seeing it on television. We've seen it for a number of years. But here is a prime example of how, when people are not critically thinking, when people may be struggling with reading, writing, or comprehension, they project blame instead of like looking at the data, looking at what's on television or any other media platform right in front of their eyes. And I'm not here to demonize men. I'm not here to demonize anybody, but I really need for people to think about this. And if you've heard me, many people have been following me for years on my podcast, other platforms, and things like that. So I've been talking about there being a literacy crisis, and the literacy to pipeline to prison is crazy. And I worked with all the men that were in Dr. Jones's caseload when I worked in corrections were learning how to read. I did not read and write. I did not, and even though my job capacity was a mental health professional, it's astounding to me that I would say that men who couldn't read or write, you're 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, you're incarcerated, where they allow you to get your diploma, you can go to college and do all this stuff. It's astounding to me that in 2026 that there are men and women who cannot read or write. But here, you cannot blame the violence of one group on another group. You have to start taking accountability. And this is the dangers, when people can get on social media and they just start spouting off. And the other thing that I mentioned to this gentleman was how there are a lot of intergenerational families that are incarcerated. There are fathers, there are sons, there's father-son duos in corrections. I ought to know. I've seen it. I've worked it. But he's trying to discount it and say, no, no, no. That's the rare. That's exceptional. That barely even happens. That happens all the time. There's fathers, sons, uncles, cousins, their entire families, daughters, mothers, their entire families, intergenerational, granddaddy, daddy, son, that are incarcerated, where history repeats what it doesn't repair. And if you think history doesn't repeat what it doesn't repair, we're going back to segregation. And I hate to break it to you, but the fact that we're going back to segregation has nothing to do with a woman. A woman is not, anywhere in the mix in making the decisions that are being made currently in the United States. They may be the mouthpiece that communicates that, but the things that we're seeing, people get shot on television, and I can't tell you the last time I've seen a woman shoot another person in broad daylight or encourage someone. And I'm not going to sit here and say that, women are nice angels, because if you followed me long enough, you've heard the things that I've spoken about women, but I don't see women on TV shooting and killing other men or encouraging men to shoot and kill. I just don't see that. That is a choice that men make all by themselves. And I'm going to really need for people to start really thinking critically and participating, and not just spouting off, but I really need for people to listen to people who have education, degree, lived experience. But even if you don't take Dr. Jones's word for it, read. Google is free. There have been many books written on incarcerations, in Black community. Look at politics. Look at everything that you see, and you come back to me once you have read, you have written, you have really sought out outside information. You come back to me and you tell me how much of that is caused by women. And I only want to hear logical arguments, and stuff on that. And I'm happy, I don't have a problem with anybody who disagrees with me or anything like that. I get, when people get disrespectful or out of pocket about it, that's one thing. But also when people are just unwilling to look at even things that are just playing out right in front of them, nationally, and you want to turn around and blame another group that has nothing to do with that, with what we're even seeing play out in current day news. Hope that helps. Thanks so much. And one other thing here, that I forgot to mention, but I've talked about it before. I don't like the idea that women are always the scapegoat and that fathers lack any accountability, or the inability to father a child is again related back to the mother, or the mother being less than desirable, or the mother being faulty in some way. Um, there, uh, Fathers have an impact on children even before children are born. Even during conception, fathers have such a strong impact on children. And I've spoken about this, about sperm and the impact that it has on even, women miscarrying, women rejecting the fetus, developmental disorders, other traits in which fathers have such a strong impact before the baby is even born. You have a strong impact on behavioral issues in children, even down to autism and ADHD. Those are strong traits that come from fathers. And you could Google that. You don't have to take Dr. Jones's word for it. You can Google that. You can research that. You could look up articles on that. There's plenty of research that talks about the genetic dispositions that are strongly linked to fathers causing it.